I'm Zhang, and this is the Compass Dragon. In our last episode, we saw how Qin Huang forged the concept of Tianxia all under heaven. For over 4 centuries, from 202 BC to 220 AD, following the collapse of the Qin dynasty, that dream of a single, unified empire held strong under the Han dynasty. But by the year 208 AD, that dream was burning. The Han dynasty was collapsing. Warlords tore the map of China apart. And one man, the formidable, decisive, and highly ambitious Prime Minister Cao Cao, believed he could stitch it back together with an army of 1 million men. He was wrong. In this episode, we sail down the Yangtze River to the most decisive naval battle in Chinese history, where fire, fog, and a brilliant strategist would change the destiny of Asia forever. Welcome to the Battle of Red Cliffs. To understand the sheer scale of Red Cliffs, we must first understand the chaos that preceded it. By the early 3rd century AD, the Han dynasty, now nearly 4 centuries old, was crumbling from within. The young Emperor Qian, who had ascended to the throne in 189 AD at just 8 years old, was nothing more than a political puppet. He had no real power, no control over the regional warlords who carved China into fiefdoms. But one warlord held the strings to this puppet emperor, Cao Cao, a formidable, decisive, and highly ambitious statesman and military commander. Cao Cao had already proven his genius at the Battle of Guandu in 200 AD, where he defeated his main rival Yuan Shao and reunified northern China. By 207 AD, he had secured his northern flank by crushing the Wuhan people at the Battle of White Wolf Mountain. When he returned to his capital at Ye in 208 AD, Cao Cao appointed himself chancellor. This gave him absolute control over the imperial government and the perfect veneer of legitimacy for his next move. His goal was absolute: sweep across the Yangtze, eliminate his rivals, and finally reunify Tianxia under his command. His advance was terrifyingly fast. The local governor of Jing province surrendered without a fight. Liu Bei, a distant relative of the Han imperial family known for his benevolence, was caught off guard and forced into a desperate, chaotic retreat. At the Battle of Changban, Cao Cao's elite cavalry nearly wiped out Liu Bei's forces. It was only through the legendary bravery of Liu Bei's generals that his family and his chief strategist, Zhuge Liang, escaped across the river. With Liu Bei on the run, Cao Cao's massive army historical records suggest anywhere from 200,000 to 800,000 men reached the northern bank of the Yangtze. Facing him was the allied force of Liu Bei and Sun Quan, the young, ambitious heir to the Jiangdong region, numbering barely 50,000. But before a single arrow was fired, the alliance itself hung by a thread. Liu Bei's main advisor, the brilliant Zhuge Liang, was sent south to Chaisang to negotiate with Sun Quan. The odds were stacked against him. Zhuge Liang told Sun Quan that Liu Bei and his nephew Liu Qi each commanded 10,000 men. These numbers may have been exaggerated, but the truth was stark. However large a force the pair fielded, it was no match against Cao Cao's army in an open battle. Sun Quan had to make a choice: submit to the north, or gamble everything on a river battle. But Cao Cao faced a fatal geographical disadvantage. His soldiers were northerners. They were masters of cavalry and infantry on the dry plains, but they were not sailors. The rolling waves of the Yangtze made his troops violently seasick. Plague and dysentery began to ravage his camps. To solve this, Cao Cao ordered his massive fleet of warships to be chained together with heavy iron cables. This created a stable, floating fortress. From a distance, the chained fleet looked like an impenetrable wall of wood and iron stretching across the river. But this tactical decision was his ultimate undoing. On the southern bank, the Allied commander, the brilliant Zhu Yu, immediately spotted the flaw. If the ships were chained, they could not maneuver. And if they could not maneuver, they could not escape a fire attack. But to burn the fleet, the wind needed to blow from the southeast toward the north. In the dead of winter, the wind only blows from the northwest. This is where the legend of Zhuge Liang comes in. In the classic novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhuge Liang builds an altar and magically summons the east wind. In historical reality, it was likely a deep understanding of local meteorology and the microclimates of the Yangtze River Valley. Regardless of how it happened, on the night of the winter solstice, the wind shifted. The east wind began to blow. The Allied general, Huang sent a letter of surrender to Cao Cao. Cao Cao, confident in his overwhelming superiority, accepted it. Huang loaded 10 small, fast ships with dry wood, reeds, and fish oil. As they approached the northern fleet, the wind at their backs, they suddenly caught fire. The northern soldiers watched in curiosity, expecting a surrender. Instead, the blazing ships slammed directly into the chained warships. Because the ships were locked together, they could not scatter. The fire jumped from ship to ship. The intense heat was so fierce that it spread to the camps on the shore. The Yangtze River turned into a river of hell. The sky glowed red, reflecting off the steep cliffs, giving the battle its name. Red Cliffs. Cao Cao's dream of a unified Tianxia burned to ash. He ordered a grueling retreat north through the treacherous, muddy trails of Huarong. The Allied victory at Red Cliffs ensured the survival of Liu Bei and Sun Xuan and left them in firm control of the Yangtze River. They established defensible frontiers that would later serve as the foundation for the states of Shuhan and Eastern Wu during the Three Kingdoms period. The battle and Liu Bei's subsequent capture of Jing province confirmed the separation of southern China from the northern heartland of the Yellow River Valley. It foreshadowed a north-south axis of hostility that would persist for centuries. Cao Cao's defeat ensured that China would remain divided for nearly 4 centuries, until the Sui dynasty finally reunified the country in 589 AD. It shattered his momentum, secured the independence of the south, and birthed the legendary, romanticized era of the Three Kingdoms. Let's widen the lens. What was happening across the world while Cao Cao's chained fleet burned on the Yangtze? In the west, the Roman Empire was at the absolute height of its power, but it was facing its own brutal geographical limits. Emperor Septimius Severus was personally leading his legions into the misty bogs of Caledonia, modern-day Scotland, where the Romans faced a grueling guerrilla war against the Picts. These sophisticated Celtic tribal confederations knew the treacherous terrain perfectly. Though the Romans called them Picti, the painted ones, because they decorated their bodies with blue woad dye before battle, this was not primitive savagery, but a sacred ritual deeply connected to their spiritual relationship with the land. While Cao Cao was trying to force the natural barrier of the Yangtze River, Roman soldiers were dying in the freezing mud north of Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall itself was a marvel of imperial engineering. Built nearly a century earlier by Emperor Hadrian, it stretched 73 miles across northern Britain, from the River Tyne to the Solway Firth. It was more than just a wall. It was a fortified frontier system with mile castles, turrets, and garrison forts every few miles. South of the wall, the province of Britannia was divided into Britannia Superior and Britannia Inferior, governed by Roman legates, dotted with Roman villas, bathhouses, and towns where Latin was spoken and Roman law enforced. But north of the wall, that was a world Rome could not conquer. Both empires were learning the hard way that absolute control has its geographical limits. Meanwhile, in Persia, the Parthian Empire, the great rival of Rome, was in its death throes. By 208 AD, the Parthian dynasty was collapsing. An ambitious Persian noble named Ardashir was already building the movement that would overthrow the Parthians and establish the Sassanid Empire in just 16 years. The Sassanids would become Rome's most dangerous eastern foe for the next 4 centuries. Further east, in the region of Bactria and northern India, the Kushan Empire was thriving. They were a melting pot of cultures, Greek, Persian, Indian, and Chinese influences all blending together. Under their rule, Buddhism was transforming from a regional philosophy into a major world religion. And critically, Buddhism was already beginning its slow journey into China. By 208 AD, Buddhist monks and merchants had been traveling the Silk Road for over a century, carrying sutras and teachings into the war-torn lands that Cao Cao was trying to conquer. The first Chinese translations of Buddhist texts were already circulating among the educated elite. While Chinese warlords fought for control of the earthly realm, a spiritual revolution was quietly taking root. The philosophy of compassion and enlightenment from India was beginning to offer an alternative to the harsh legalism that had governed China since the Qin dynasty. In the Americas, completely isolated from the Old World, civilizations were reaching their own zenith. In the Valley of Mexico, the great city of Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities in the world, with a population exceeding 100,000 people. The pyramids of the sun and the moon dominated the skyline, massive structures built without metal tools or the wheel. Around this same time, a dramatic power shift was occurring within the city. The old Temple of the Feathered Serpent was being eclipsed by the rising influence of the Avenue of the Dead complex, a fundamental transformation in religious and political authority. Further south, in the dense jungles of Central America, the Maya civilization was entering its classic period. City-states like Tikal, Calakmul, and Copan were rising, developing their sophisticated calendar systems, hieroglyphic writing, and astronomical observations. They had no knowledge of Rome, China, or Persia, and those empires had no knowledge of them. Yet, all of these civilizations, whether on the Yangtze, the Tiber, the Euphrates, or in the Valley of Mexico, were grappling with the exact same fundamental questions. How do you govern vast, diverse populations across unforgiving landscapes? How do you balance unity with local identity? In 208 AD, the Roman Empire was hitting a physical wall of bogs and mountains in the north. The Parthian Empire was collapsing, about to be replaced by the Sassanids. The Kushan Empire was acting as a cultural bridge, spreading Buddhism along the Silk Road. In China, Cao Cao was trying to use sheer military might to break through the geographical barrier of the Yangtze, and in the Americas, Teotihuacan and the Maya were building pyramids that would stand for millennia. None of these empires knew the others existed, yet they were all writing the same chapter of human history, separated only by distance. Today, you can walk the very cliffs where this battle took place and feel the echoes of the east wind. Your journey begins in Wuhan, a massive, vibrant metropolis and the perfect base for exploring Three Kingdoms history. You can fly into Wuhan Tianhe International Airport or take the high-speed rail from Beijing or Shanghai. While in Wuhan, you must visit the Yellow Crane Tower. Though rebuilt many times, it is one of the most famous towers in China, deeply tied to the poetry and legends of this era. To visit the tower, you cannot just show up and buy a ticket at the door. You must book in advance using the official WeChat Mini Program. Search for Huang Gongyan Yellow Crane Tower Park. You will need to enter your passport details when booking. When you arrive, there are no physical paper tickets. You simply scan your physical passport at the turnstiles to enter. From Wuhan, the train ride to the actual battlefield is smooth and fast. Take the high-speed train from Wuhan to Chibi South Station, which takes just 40 to 50 minutes. Once you arrive, you will head to the Chibi Ancient Battlefield Park. While you can buy tickets at the physical visitor center, it is much faster to use the WeChat Mini Program赤壁古战场 Chibi Ancient Battlefield to scan your passport and bypass the lines. The park offers a stunning mix of history, nature, and mythology. The first thing you will see is the massive stone inscriptions of red cliffs carved directly into the red rock face. Legend says the characters were carved by Zhou Yu himself with his sword after the victory, though historians believe they were likely added during the Song dynasty. As you walk through the park, you will encounter dramatic bronze statues of the key figures, and you can explore the ancient temples and the Wind and Fire Terrace, where legend says Zhuge Liang prayed for the east wind. The park is built right on the steep cliffs, offering panoramic views of the Yangtze River. To truly understand the cultural impact of this battle, you must also experience the local cuisine. Hubei province is famous for its freshwater fish. After visiting the battlefield, sit down at a local restaurant in Chibi and order wuchang fish, steamed with ginger and scallions. It is said that even the soldiers of the three kingdoms appreciated the rich bounty of this river. The best time to visit Hubei province is April to May or September to October. Summer is brutally hot and humid along the Yangtze, while winter is cold and foggy. The Battle of Red Cliffs teaches us a profound lesson about the fragility of absolute power and the true meaning of the mandate of heaven. Cao Cao arrived with overwhelming might, convinced that sheer numbers and political legitimacy would crush all resistance. But he underestimated two brilliant rivals, Liu Bei, the rightful heir with the mandate of heaven's favor, and Sun Quan, the young lord who dared to defend his homeland against impossible odds. Together with the strategist Zhuge Liang's cunning and Zhou Yu's naval genius, they proved that you cannot force unity through iron chains and military might alone. True unity requires the hearts of the people, the alignment of geography, and perhaps the favor of the east wind. Qin Shi Huang proved that a unified China was physically possible, but the Battle of Red Cliffs proved that the mandate of heaven cannot be conquered, it must be earned. Cao Cao's defeat did more than just burn his fleet. It plunged China into nearly 4 centuries of fragmentation, war, and immense human suffering. Yet, from this crucible of chaos emerged something extraordinary. Centuries later, during the Ming Dynasty, a scholar named Luo Guanzhong would immortalize this era in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, one of the 4 great classical novels of Chinese literature. This masterpiece transformed historical figures into legendary archetypes. Zhuge Liang became the embodiment of wisdom, Guan Yu the symbol of loyalty, and Cao Cao the cunning antagonist. For over 600 years, this story has captivated Chinese hearts. It has been retold in operas, paintings, television series, and video games. The Three Kingdoms period proved that even in division, the Chinese spirit endures, quietly waiting for the next dynasty to try again. The empire fractured, but the dream of Tianxia, the concept of all under heaven, survived. He failed to unify the map, but he succeeded in forging a legend that would captivate China for the next 2 millennia. Next time, we leave the rivers of the south and head to the golden age of the Silk Road. The year is 700 AD. We are going to the greatest city on earth, a sprawling metropolis of 1 million souls where Persian merchants, Roman glass, and Buddhist monks mingled in the streets. We are entering the Tang dynasty. I'm Zhang. This is the Compass Dragon. See you in 2 weeks.